Welcome to this lecture on the principles of ecology. Today, we are diving into a fascinating and fierce topic known as interspecific competition. In the natural world, survival is rarely easy. Animals, plants, and even microscopic bacteria are constantly interacting, and often they are fighting for the exact same resources. Understanding this silent battle is absolutely essential for anyone studying zoology or ecology because it shapes the very structure of life on Earth. Let us begin our journey into how species compete, coexist, or drive each other to extinction. To understand our topic, let us start with a simple analogy. Imagine you are opening a brand new coffee shop in a small, quiet neighborhood. If you are the only coffee shop in town, you get all the customers. Your business grows rapidly without any stress. But what happens if a completely different brand of coffee shop opens right across the street from you? Suddenly, you are both fighting for the exact same limited number of coffee drinkers. Because you have to share the customers, neither of your businesses will grow as large or as fast as they would have if they were alone. This exact scenario plays out every single day in nature. Now that we have our coffee shop analogy, let us apply this to biology. In ecology, this fierce interaction is formally known as interspecific competition. The prefix inter means between, so this specifically refers to competition between individuals of completely different species. Do not confuse this with intraspecific competition, which happens within the exact same species. By definition, interspecific competition is a biological interaction where the population growth, survival, and overall fitness of one species are negatively impacted by the presence of another. This happens because both species need a shared resource that is in short supply, known as a limiting resource. Every single bite of food taken by species A is permanently stolen from species B. You might wonder why ecologists care so deeply about this specific interaction. Well, interspecific competition is actually one of the most powerful driving forces in all of nature. It shapes how entire ecosystems are built and maintained. It determines which species can coexist peacefully in a forest and which will be driven to local extinction. Without understanding this, we could not predict what happens when a dangerous invasive species enters a fragile environment. For example, conservationists use these exact principles to protect endangered native red squirrels in the United Kingdom from being wiped out by introduced gray squirrels. Ultimately, this constant struggle forces species to evolve and adapt over thousands of years just to survive. So, how do we actually measure this struggle? To truly understand and predict the winner of this ecological battle, we use a brilliant mathematical tool called the Lotka-Volterra competition model. Before we look at the math, we must remember the basic logistic growth equation. That basic equation shows how a single species grows until it hits the maximum capacity its environment can support. But when we add a second, competing species to the mix, the math must change. We have to mathematically subtract the resources that the second species is stealing from the first. To do this, ecologists introduce a special conversion factor called the competition coefficient, which translates the impact of one species into the currency of another. This brings us to the actual Lotka-Volterra equation for species 1. Conceptually, this formula takes the standard logistic growth of a population and reduces it based on the presence of a competitor. Let us break down the symbols. The term dN1 over dt represents the rate of population growth for species 1 over time. The symbol R1 is the intrinsic growth rate, meaning how fast they would reproduce with unlimited resources. K1 is the carrying capacity, the maximum number of individuals the environment can support. N1 and N2 are the current populations of species 1 and 2. Finally, alpha is the competition coefficient. If alpha increases, species 2 is consuming more resources, which physically causes the growth rate of species 1 to drop significantly. Now that we understand the first equation, let us look at its exact mirror image. This second equation calculates the growth rate for the competing species 2. The structure is identical, but the variables are swapped. Here, dn2 over dt is the growth rate of species 2. R2 is its intrinsic growth rate, and K2 is its carrying capacity. The new and crucial symbol here is beta. Beta is the competition coefficient, representing the negative effect of species 1 on species 2. If beta is a very large number, it means even a few individuals of species 1 will consume a massive amount of resources. When both populations increase, the available space shrinks for everyone, pushing both growth rates closer to zero. Before we solve a full population growth problem, we need to understand how to use the competition coefficient as a mathematical translation tool. This simple formula calculates the equivalent impact. Conceptually, it tells us how many individuals of species 1 are displaced by the competing species 2. The symbol alpha is our competition coefficient, and N2 is the actual number of competitors present. By multiplying them together, we find out exactly how much space or food is being taken up by the rival species. If the number of competitors increases, the equivalent impact grows, meaning fewer resources are left for the primary species. Let us see this in action with a concrete example. Let us apply our translation formula to a lush, grassy field. We're given species 1, which are small sheep, and species 2, which are large cows. The problem states that the competition coefficient, alpha, is 3.0, and there are currently 50 cows in the field. We are asked to find how many equivalent sheep these cows represent. We choose our equivalent impact formula because it directly translates the cow's grass consumption into sheep terms. We substitute 3.0 for alpha and 50 for N2. Multiplying 3.0 by 50 gives us 150. Physically, this final answer means that having 50 cows in the field consumes the exact same amount of grass as having 150 sheep. The environment feels like there are an extra 150 sheep eating the grass. Now that we have successfully translated competitors, let us tackle a full population growth scenario. Imagine a forest ecosystem with two competing bird species eating the exact same type of seeds. For species 1, we are given an intrinsic growth rate of 0.2 per year, a carrying capacity of 1,000 birds, and a current population of 400 birds. The competing species 2 has a population of 200 birds, and the competition coefficient alpha is 1.5. We need to find the current population growth rate of species 1 under these stressful conditions. To do this, we will need to use the full Lotka-Volterra equation we learned earlier, carefully plugging in every single one of these values. Here is the step-by-step calculation. We start with the Lotka-Volterra equation for species 1. We substitute our given values: 0.2 for R1, 400 for N1, 1,000 for K1, 1.5 for alpha, and 200 for N2. Following the order of operations, we first calculate the inner multiplication. 1.5 times 200 gives 300 equivalent birds. We also simplify the outside term, zero point 0.2 times 400 to get 80. Next, we subtract the 400 birds of species 1 and the 300 equivalent birds of species 2 from the 1,000 carrying capacity. This leaves 300 in the numerator, meaning there is only enough food left for 300 more birds. Dividing 300 by 1,000 gives 0.3. Finally, multiplying 80 by 0.3 gives our answer of 24. Physically, this means the population will grow by exactly 24 birds this year, severely slowed down by competition. Let us visualize everything we have learned using a Lotka-Volterra isocline graph. Look closely at the axes. The horizontal axis represents the population of species 1, and the vertical axis represents the population of species 2. The two diagonal lines you see are called zero net growth isoclines. Along the line labeled dn1 over dt equals 0, the population of species 1 is perfectly stable. The other line represents stability for species 2. The most important part of this diagram is where the two lines intersect, labeled as the stable equilibrium. The small arrows represent population vectors. Notice how, no matter where the populations start in the 4 regions, the arrows point inward toward that intersection. This diagram teaches us that under these specific conditions, both species balance each other out and manage to coexist in the environment. We have covered a lot of ground today, so let us review the key takeaways. First, interspecific competition is a fundamental struggle where completely different species fight for the exact same limited resources. Second, this interaction is costly. It negatively impacts the population growth and survival of both species involved. Third, we can mathematically predict the outcome of this battle using the Lotka-Volterra equations, relying on competition coefficients to translate the impact of one species onto another. Finally, remember that this constant battle for resources is what ultimately shapes the incredible diversity, structure, and balance of the natural world around us. You now have a solid understanding of how ecologists model competition. Great job!